Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking time to tune in as we speak at length about UFC 295, where we have Yuri Prochazka coming in to take on Alex Pereira. We've got two title fights on the line tomorrow. We also have Sergey Pavlovich taking on Tom Aspinall in a fight that was put together in relatively short order when John Jones and Stipe Miocic were unable to fit the bill. So let's get things kicked off. I want to welcome everybody to the Fight Morning Quick Card Breakdown Show. I know we're putting this out a little early. On location out here, enjoying some rays and getting the iron sharpened as we prepare for this big card. So we have 13 fights. We had a few fighters miss weight earlier today. That, of course, is a cause for concern every time out when you have fighters miss weight. And the first fight of the night, we actually saw Jamal-Emmers come in at, I believe, 147 pounds. So he missed weight by 1 full pound. And in New York, you are unable to take the extra hour to cut weight unless it's a championship bout. And in this case, it isn't. And he's taking on Denis Buzukja. Now, Buzukja is only 26 years of age. He's a fighter out of Serra-Longo who's come up short most recently against Sean Woodson last time out. And we saw in the Contender Series he was able to get the job done. But here against Jamal-Emmers, he's taking on Jamal-Emmers he's a jack of all trades, but he isn't necessarily gifted in one specific area. And he's taking on Buzukja, who is going to come out guns blazing. I think this fight is much more closely contested than the current line suggests. You have Buzukja coming in as the plus 210 underdog, and he's taking on Jamal-Emmers, who's currently sitting, at last checked a few minutes ago, at minus 258 at the betting window. So I think this fight's going to be much closer battle. Woodson, last time out, had a major reach advantage against Buzukja. Here, this fight is close to a toss-up. I'm leaning towards the Jamal-Emmers side. I believe that he does have more tools at his disposal here, and I'm also concerned about the missing of the weight. So that's a red flag here. You know, you had the full camp to get this done, and it just didn't happen. So the pick's going to be Emmers, but I'm going to be pulling for Buzukja inside of Madison Square Garden. The next fight of the night, we have Josh Van taking on Kevin Borjas, and both of these fighters are flyweights. They are 125 pounders, and Josh Van reminds me a little bit of Adrian Yanez in regards to the striking acumen, the killer instinct. When he sees red, he goes for it. Of course, that's a beautiful sign when you're able to finish the job. And if he sees a chink in his opponent's armor in Kevin Borjas, he should try to go for the kill. The problem is Borjas is a longer fighter and is fairly tough out there. What's interesting to me too, you saw the Zalgas Zumagulov fight against Josh Van. Josh Van came out, won all 3 rounds, was able to fight extremely hard, and granted, his wrestling takedown defense wasn't necessarily tested to a significant degree. I have concerns on the Van side, especially at currently minus 245 at the betting window. And you look at Kevin Borjas, and he's a fighter who is lanky. He is going to throw hammers. He's going to try to stay in this fight. Granted, the more technical striker here is Van. And also, I have listened to Daniel Cormier talk this morning about Josh Van and how he basically had never wrestled in his life and had really tried to pick things up about 6 months ago. So I don't think either of these fighters are going to come out with a grappling heavy approach. I think we're going to see both of these fighters look to fight at range and try to stick to their strengths. man, I'm going to be picking Van, but I don't necessarily trust him. And I do have a solid resume when it comes to picking flyweight fights, but Van, only 22 years of age. You got Borjas, who's 25 years of age. I am on the fence with this one. I'm going to be picking Van, but I'm not going out of my way to play him at minus 245. Next up, we've got the third fight of the night, where we've got Kyung-Ho Kang, who's now an elder statesman, 36 years of age. He's been in the fight game for a long time. And he is taking on John Castaneda in a bout that is a catchweight bout at 138 pounds. So I have some concerns here about John Castaneda. I heard that this fight was catchweight due to his doing here. And he's taking on Kang, who's a proficient striker who did falter down the stretch against Haniyaya. And of course, that's a cause for concern when you're fading against a somebody who should not be in the fight game anymore, Haniyaya. Haniyaya has been injured many, many times, but he's come out the other side victorious. Now, in this fight, Castaneda's got the grappling edge here. He has the ability to push a pace, and we saw against Murin Gafarov, he can come out here and do that. Kang, the much cleaner striker. At range, Kang should be getting in and landing, seemingly at will at times, I suspect. Now, I'm going to be rolling with the favorite here. I apologize, John Castaneda at minus 130. I think that you saw. I believe that he came in at 137 pounds or so. Looked solid on the scales, and I believe that he's going to be able to push a pace here and cause Kang some fits. So the pick's going to be John Castaneda in that matchup. Next up, we have a fight that has been on my fridge for a while here. Mark Madsen taking on Jared Gordon, lightweight matchup. And Jared Gordon coming in as a significant favorite here. I believe he's sitting at minus 205 at one book, and you could hunt around. You might be able to get minus 190 or so. Jared Gordon, who is coming off of the what do you want to call it? A no contest. There was a headbutt that took place with Bobby Green, and you have on the other side of the fight Mark Madsen, who took a loss recently against Grant Dawson. And Grant Dawson came into that fight heavy, and Mark Madsen was systematically outworked in that matchup. And you saw Mark Madsen typically will land one strike at a time. He doesn't have the energy to string combinations together. And even if he wrestles, that's taxing as well. Now, you watch the Vince Pichel fight. He was, in my eyes, very fortunate to walk away victorious there. At the end of the second round, it looked like Madsen had hit a wall, hit a significant wall from a cardio perspective. And then Vince Pichel made some catastrophic errors in the grappling areas and came up short. Jared Gordon, if he doesn't get knocked out, if he doesn't lose consciousness here, I see him completely outworking Mark Madsen, especially once this hits the second and third rounds. It looks like both of these fighters had a solid weight cut and they're ready to go. I'm going to be picking Jared Gordon there. I've invested in Jared Gordon at a few different numbers here and a few different price points. So I'm picking Jared Gordon to win. He could potentially win this fight inside the distance. I could also see him winning this fight via decision. So Jared Gordon is going to be the pick here. And Marco Madsen, he's 39 years of age. He's got a lot of mileage on him, and that's outside of the octagon. He hasn't necessarily competed as a mixed martial artist, but he's also been a wrestler, a silver medalist wrestler. And then you have Jared Gordon. We forgot to mention that this fight takes place at Madison Square Garden, and I believe that that's going to be a big difference maker here also. So give me Jared Gordon in that matchup. Then we have Nazim Sadykhov, who is a Serra-Longo fighter who's going to be fighting close to home turf here against Vyashev Borshilov. Borschev is also known as Slava Claus here. We saw Mark Diakese do a bit of a number on Slava Claus, where Borschev was taken down and outworked, out wrestled. Mike Davis also, same situation here. And Borschev, excellent striker. Excellent striker. Has a bit of a size advantage, too. When I watched back the weigh-ins here, which just ended, ceremonial weigh-ins just ended a few minutes ago, the size difference here for Borschev, much larger fighter, and he's taking on Sadykhov, who, if you watch the weigh-in show, Sadykhov was talking about utilizing wrestling, and he spoke specifically with Daniel Cormier about that as well. That's something that was brought to my attention, and Chris Weidman was talking highly of him. I mean, why would he not? They're both from the same camp. But Sadykhov, although he may not be the slickest of strikers, and may not be the quickest fighter, he does have some tools at his disposal that are advantageous for him to utilize, namely his grappling. I also believe that the cardio here is in Sadykhov's favor. And Vyacheslav Borschev, he does crack, but he can get cracked too. We saw against Dakota Bush and others. He can be brought back to reality here. And I'm going to be picking Sadykhov to win in that matchup. Next up, we have Mateusz Rebecki taking on Roosevelt Roberts. Roosevelt Roberts missed weight here. And look at the massive size advantage, at least from a lanky, tall perspective. You had Roosevelt Roberts, who has one of the most narrow shoulders in mixed martial arts. Look at his frame. And the way he sized up against Mateusz Rebecki was, it was interesting, to say the least. You saw Rebecki, who is a steamroller out there. We'll talk about other steamrollers in regards to Matt Frevola, but you have Rebecki, who reminds me of a bit of El Trator Michel Prazeres. Prazeres is short and stout and almost built like a fire hydrant, but can crack and push a pace and utilize his wrestling. And I believe that Mateusz Rebecki is going to come in to try to utilize the same tactics in that regard. Now, can Roberts pose a threat at range? I believe he can, but I don't think he's ready to go full 15 minutes. As you could see at the weigh-ins, he had his hands on his hips, and he looked like he was pushed to the limit there. So the pick in that fight is going to be Rebecki. Rebecki's only lost one fight, 18-1 overall record, but he sits as a minus 625 betting favorite. Next up, you have Tabitha Ricci taking on Rebecki-Godinez. Rebecki-Godinez got down to around minus 120 at the betting window at some books. Now has been blown out to, let's see, currently minus 180 at the betting window for Rebecki-Godinez, who's coming off of a victory over Elise Reed, where now we must mention Rebecki-Godinez has a camp change that being down in Mexico at Lobo Gym is a big difference maker in my eyes. You also have another fighter, Diego Lopes, who's competing in that same gym. You saw the Carnelossi fight, how Godinez was able to utilize her wrestling there and got away from it in the Angela Hill fight. I suspect that Rebecki-Godinez is going to get back to her wrestling, get back to her striking, especially at range. You look at the way Tabitha Ricci fights, and there's no conviction in her strike. She's not trying to hurt her opponent. I don't think that she's going to inflict any damage whatsoever on the feet against Rebecki-Godinez, who could and does get caught at times, but Tabitha Ricci doesn't necessarily pose a threat on the feet. Tabitha Ricci is going to try to accrue top time here. Can she do it? Possibly. Can she land a takedown or two around and pull off round-winning scenarios? Yes, but I think that the rightful favorite in this matchup is Rebecki-Godinez. I'll be picking Rebecki-Godinez to win as the minus 180 betting favorite. And I understand why folks are on Ricci, but I just don't see her as being as well-rounded of a fighter. And I think that's going to be a difference maker in this fight, especially in the larger octagon. Now, let's talk flyweights again. We've got Steve Erceg sitting at minus 193 at the betting window, and he's taking on Alessandro-Costa. And Alessandro-Costa is only 27 years of age. He's someone who we don't have the full we don't have the full picture of Alessandro Costa. He spent a lot of time on his back on the regional scene. He can lock in submissions. He is a Brazilian banger who is potentially a gas bag. He is heavy-handed. He will throw to the body. Alessandro Costa against Jimmy Flick, we saw that, and the Amir Albazi fight, the performance there left a lot to be desired. And then on the other side of the fight, you've got Steve Erceg, who is a wiry grappler who has a lot of guts. He's got chutzpah, man. This kid is going to go for it, and he's going to not give up on himself. In this fight, I think this is going to be this fight's going to go to a lot of different areas here. I think that this fight is going to test the limits of both fighters. I'll be picking Steve Erceg, but I'm doing that so reluctantly because I believe that we don't necessarily know exactly who Alessandro Costa is at only 27 years of age. I think that Alessandro Costa, he does have a high ceiling, and I think both of these fighters have a relatively high ceiling until Erceg ends up getting dropped and dismantled on the feet. The David Dvorak fight, very impressive from Steve Erceg. So you saw the depth that he was willing to push, and that's the issue here. The issue here is Alessandro Costa and his cardio. I have questions about that. I don't think he's going to be able to push a hard 15 minutes. We may not need all 15 minutes, but give me Steve Erceg in that matchup. Next up, we have Pat Sabatini taking on Diego Lopes. Diego Lopes, a Lobo gym team member who I was at Movsar Evloev's fight against Diego Lopes, and I was very impressed with Diego Lopes and his ability to throw up submission after submission and fight tooth and nail to the bitter end. And he also was throwing hands. He's developing before our eyes. I think that the Joe Anderson-Brito fight was ages ago, lifetimes ago, in regards to Diego Lopes' professional career, and that he has a bright future ahead of him. So then you have Pat Sabatini on the other side of the fight, where you can say a true veteran of the game, a stalwart of the featherweight division, somebody who also can get caught on the feet. We saw Damon Jackson cause him fits. We also saw Jamal Emmers cause him fits. And in this spot, I think that I don't want to say wild and craziness because I know there's a technical acumen here. There's a highly skilled Brazilian jiu-jitsu game that's being implemented by Diego Lopes. I think that his unpredictability, his willingness to push a pace, and his work on the feet also. I think that if this fight stays standing, I don't trust Pat Sabatini. But I know if Sabatini is able to take the fight to the mat and is able to prevent and fend off submission attempts by Diego Lopes, then that is the path to victory for Pat Sabatini. But that's going to be a long 15 minutes for Pat Sabatini. I honestly don't see Sabatini locking up a submission unless he's able to gain full mount and Lopes gives up his back and then the choke gets sunk in. But I'm going to be picking Diego Lopes to win. I think he was a solid play as an underdog, and I think that he's going to fight hard for your money. And the other thing is, I was in Newark for that fight, and I saw for the fight against Movsar Evloev, and I saw Evloev win the crowd over. And I think he's already won MSG crowd over, despite Sabatini being a so-called hometown fighter coming out of Pennsylvania. So give me Diego Lopes there. Next up, we have Matt Frevola taking on Frevola-Sant Denis. Sant Denis coming in as the minus 225 betting favorite, and he's taking on a Matt Frevola who's looked the best that he's ever looked. Right now, coming off of a win over Drew Dober. He's a fighter who's going to fight hard for your money. Both of these fighters fight tremendously hard for your money. The Zaleski dos Santos fight against Sant Denis showed you that he was willing to stay in the fight and go for it and do whatever he had to there. And here, Frevola, it looked like he's giving up some size. We watched the weigh-ins, and that was a cause for concern. The weigh-ins here, I believe that Sant Denis, when he is able to fully rehydrate, I think we're going to see a larger fighter here. And I believe that closing distance in this fight is where the rubber meets the road for both fighters. I think that Sant Denis has that there's a chance Sant Denis might get caught here while he's trying to close distance against Matt Frevola, especially a hook. I think that we might see one of the hooks that laid out Drew Dober get plastered on Sant Denis, and it wouldn't surprise me to see Sant Denis take it, because he's taken just about everything that Dos Santos could throw at him. And this fight, man, this is a hard fight to call. I think both of these fighters have shown us they've got great motors. They can go the distance, man, and they're tough as nails. So I'm going to be picking Frevola-Sant Denis, but I'm not willing to lay the minus 225. I'll say that. Next up, let's talk Jessica Andrade taking on Mackenzie-Dern. Mackenzie-Dern coming in as the minus 205 betting favorite here. And she's someone who, against Angela Hill, showed us that there's a mean streak in her, and that even if she can't get the fight to the mat anymore and her takedown offense isn't there, she can hang on the feet. Now, is she going to be willing to do that against Jessica Andrade, who's been a hammer for the division for a while now? And she hasn't been the best nail lately. She's struggled at times. It's an issue. It's an issue. I know against Blanchfield and others, she's been routed. But I'll be honest, I watched the weigh-ins today, and Jessica Andrade looked the best she's looked on the scales in the past few years. And I know both of these ladies are going through divorces, apparently. So that's something as far as the narrative goes. But I believe both of these fighters are prepared, ready to go. I'm not there as far as playing Mackenzie-Dern as a favorite here and as a significant 2-1 favorite. I think that Andrade, if this fight plays out on the feet, you've seen the takedown defense hold up for Andrade at times. She's a marauder. And if this fight's on the feet, man, anything can happen here. I think that it's a toss-up. And I think that I actually give Andrade the significant edge on the feet, to be honest. Look at what she did to Lauren Murphy, and that fight was about a year ago. Possibly, it was less than a year ago. It was actually, I believe, in early 2023. So, tough call here, tough call. I'm leaning Mackenzie-Dern, but no play on the fight. And I think that Jessica Andrade is live here. She's got a lot to fight for. And then let's talk co-main event of the evening, where we have Sergey Pavlovich taking on Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall came in at 261 pounds. And that was including his sweatpants and socks. And last time he came out, he fought Tybura, and that was after he recovered from the knee injury. And he came in at 258 pounds when he fought Tybura. So 261. And then you have Pavlovich, who came in a little bit lighter than Tom Aspinall. And Pavlovich has apparently a fight camp under his belt. He was supposed to be the backup fighter for the Stipe Miocic-Jones fight that fell through. So he's ready to go. And then you have a lot of the pre-fight interviews. Of course, you hear things said, and there is some cause for concern. The way it's almost as if Tom Aspinall is playing possum here. He knows what his strengths are. He's going to utilize his reach, his fluidity. I mean, it looks like Sergey Pavlovich is walking through quicksand as he marches across the octagon. But he does have, like somebody posted recently, school buses in his fists. And he's able to, when he lands, they cause big-time damage. You watch back the Alistair Overeem fight against Sergey Pavlovich in Pavlovich's UFC debut. And that is an issue here. You see, I know he fought the carcass of Alistair Overeem and got blown out of the water there. But that was a long time ago, and you've seen folks rattle off victory after victory after victory in regards to Sergey Pavlovich. So you do have to put that aside. And this is a volatile matchup, but I think that if you look at the paths to victory here, you have Tom Aspinall, clear grappling edge. Also, the ability, once the fight hits the mat, his submission threat is a big factor here. And then you also look back at Sergey Pavlovich. He's landed one leg kick through 7 fights. Granted, he hasn't needed to throw leg kicks, so he hasn't. That hasn't been a necessity, and also hasn't landed a takedown yet. So I'm not coming out and saying that Pavlovich is a well-rounded fighter. He's great at what he does. He can land those fists, and he can put you out. But I have concerns here for Pavlovich, and I'm going to be rolling with the favorite, a slight favorite, I think that this line is almost at evens right now, but I'm going to be picking Tom Aspinall to walk away victorious. I know it's short notice, and of course that's a major concern here, but the more versatile, better fighter from my perspective, and also the fighter that has more paths to victory is Tom Aspinall here. Now let's talk main event of the evening. Main event of the evening, Yuri Prochazka taking on Alex Pereira. Alex Pereira is coming as the minus 125 betting favorite, and Yuri Prochazka sitting at plus 105. Prochazka, we talked about the layoff, his comeback trail here. He's coming off of a win over Glover Teixeira, who is in Alex Pereira's corner. Alex Pereira helped Glover train for that. They are like brothers, man. It's beautiful to watch how they've come together, and Danbury, Connecticut, giving that part of the world some life. And here, I think the unpredictability of Yuri Prochazka is going to be the difference maker. I know Alex Pereira, precise as they come, devastating kickboxer, and you also realize this is Pereira's second fight up at 205 pounds, coming off of a victory over Jan Blachowicz. But Jan Blachowicz is a lumbering, plodding light heavyweight who throws light kicks. And Yuri Prochazka, he lives in the moment. It's almost like I was on the Club and Sub podcast talking briefly about how it's almost as if Yuri doesn't necessarily come into the fight with a game plan. He's just ready to react to whatever happens. And I think that the explosiveness, I know, I understand. You watch Prochazka and he leaves his chin on a platter. He's been blasted across the octagon a number of times. The striking defense is an issue, and also he can be a wild man out there. Let's be brutally honest. But I think that I'm going to be picking Yuri Prochazka here, and I think that should be a hell of a fight for however long it lasts. Both of these fighters, you watch the stare down at ceremonial weigh-ins, and these young men meant business, and they what I'll leave with the Yuri Prochazka quote. It says, he said, "You are a warrior or you are not," and that tells it like it is for him. He speaks to the world in simple terms, and I think that he will walk away with the victory in that matchup. But it is a very volatile matchup, and we must preface that breakdown with that is probably the most volatile matchup on the entire card. So thank you for everybody for tuning in. We're getting this done in under 28 minutes. If you could subscribe to the channel and also like the video, that's a big help for us. I'm putting this video out in short order prior to the fight morning. So getting everybody going. So take care. Thank you, and have a great rest of your evening.